To kind of expand a little bit on what Corey went through, there's kind of these key building blocks that you're going to go through when we're preparing the application, on your behalf or working with you through this process. But number one, we need to determine, are you an NHP? That's going to be, once again, like always the first step. Very often retailers, we hear it a lot from Amazon that, someone gets delisted, they're told that they need an NPN. It's not always the case, maybe you're making a claim that is, forcing you into that category based on the claim you're making, but it might be easier to modify the claim, position it as a food or cosmetic. So once again, it kind of, to my previous point, you got to confirm, are we talking about a natural health product here? Assuming we are, then it's very important to determine what class the application is going to fall into. So basically, when we're submitting an application on your behalf, it's going to fall into either class 1, class 2, or class 3 applications. And what we're primarily looking at when determining what class it's going to fall into, it's a mix of the ingredients in your formula and the dosages of those ingredients. There are other factors, but those are kind of the main two. The reason why those are important and why they determine what class you fall into, it's basically because certain ingredients have essentially been pre-cleared by Health Canada. Health Canada publishes these pre-clearances in documents that they call monographs. A lot of people are familiar with that term, but for those that are not, it's essentially a document published by Health Canada that describes the conditions under which an ingredient is approved. So, for a vitamin D example, it would say, yep, vitamin D, we understand if you're selling a single ingredient vitamin D product, these are the recognized sources of that ingredient. This is the dosage that we recommend or recognize as, a safe and effective dosage. They would have certain claims like preventing vitamin D deficiency that would be pre-cleared under their monograph. So as you can imagine, it's easier to get products approved when we're using just these pre-cleared ingredients or ingredients that have monographs. Once we've confirmed the class, that's when we'll start to gather the necessary evidence that we need to support that application, as Corey had touched on. Depending on what class the application falls into, this could be simply, or not simply, but going through the process of just aligning with what the pre-cleared information is, or like what the monographs state with Health Canada. That would be either a class 1 or class 2 application. It's when all the evidence we're using is referencing the Health Canada monographs and essentially taking, words directly from the horse's mouth, Health Canada, and just making the case that we are in line from a dosage standpoint, from an ingredient standpoint, from a claim standpoint. We're aligning and following with what they've already pre-cleared. When it comes to class 3, that is really the unique application. It's very different than the other two. That is when we have to formally prepare a dossier of evidence to submit to Health Canada. As Corey mentioned, it's going to be the double-blind clinical trials. I'm not sure if he touched on it or not, but typically we require 2 double-blind clinical trials. One single trial is often not sufficient. But so, yeah, depending on the class of application, we're going to prepare and gather the evidence that we need. This is also where the label text would come into play. Specifically for class 3 applications, we have a little bit of ability to, draft the claims and write them in a way that would try and align with what your desired goal is or what you're hoping to put on your product label. For class 1 and 2 applications, it's a little bit more that your hands are going to be tied. When we're referencing the monographs as our evidence of safety and efficacy, it means that the claims that we're going to get approved with that product, they're going to be pulled directly from that monograph and written exactly as they are in the monograph. So either way, the label text is important at this point because either we can, tell you where you might need to make some changes or concessions on your label text to align with the monograph. Or for class 3 applications, we're going to do our best to have the claim that we're trying to get approved align with the types of claims that you're hoping to put on your product label. Once we've gathered the evidence, as Corey mentioned, it would go through internal QA checks. But when we're getting ready to submit, ultimately it's submitted electronically through the Health Canada website. one very common question we get is like, do we submit it or do you submit it? It's these NPN licenses that we're helping clients with, they would be issued to your company. It would be submitted through your portal. And so, yeah, the ultimate NPN would be owned by the brand owner. But it's submitted digitally. It's not like we're mailing a binder full of paper if we're submitting all these clinical trials, done electronically. And then, yeah, once it's submitted, the final step, Corey had touched on it, it's going to be the information request notice phase. If they have any questions, they will, reach out to you with an information request notice. It's going to be either a 5 business day or 10 business day timeline, typically, as Corey touched on. And these are most common for class 3 applications. For class 1s and 2s, typically they would either just kind of outright refuse or issue an acceptance or like issue the NPN. So information request notices are most common for class 3 applications. And yeah, so when we're helping clients out, we don't just simply submit and then you're on your own. Obviously, if there is any information request notices, we would help draft those responses and provide Health Canada the information that they need. So yeah, in summary, you confirm if you're an NHP. Assuming you are, you figure out what class your application is going to fall into. We gather the evidence we need. We submit it to Health Canada. If they have any questions, they'll reach out. If not, ultimately this ends with receiving your NPN.